Hello, and welcome to Mindshift Media, your space for exploring the fascinating landscape of our minds and unlocking the power within. I'm your host, Teodor. Let me ask you something. When you hear the term mental health, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For many, it's often the absence of something negative, not feeling depressed, not being anxious, not struggling. But what if I told you that mental health is so much more than just the absence of illness? Think about physical health for a moment. Is being physically healthy just about not having the flu or a broken bone? No, right? It's also about having energy, feeling strong, being able to move your body with ease, and nourishing yourself with good food. It's about vitality and overall well-being. The same richness and complexity apply to our mental health. It's not just about avoiding problems. It's about cultivating a state of well-being where we can cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively, realize our potential, and contribute to our communities. Yet, there's a persistent cloud of confusion that often blurs the lines between mental health and mental illness. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 8 people globally live with a mental disorder. That's a staggering number. But how many of those individuals, and even those around them, truly understand the distinction between the everyday ups and downs of mental well-being and a diagnosable mental illness? This confusion can lead to stigma, delayed help-seeking, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what it truly means to be mentally healthy. Today, we're diving deep into this crucial distinction. We'll unravel the definitions, explore the nuances, and empower you with clarity. Because understanding this difference is the first powerful step towards fostering better mental health for ourselves and everyone around us. Stick with us as we shift our perspectives. So let's start by painting a clearer picture of mental health. Imagine your mind as this incredibly sophisticated operating system, the central processor for your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Mental health, in this analogy, is that operating system running smoothly, efficiently, and adaptively. The World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. Let's break that down a little, because there are some really powerful components in that definition. First, realizing his or her own potential. This is about growth, about becoming. It's about having the psychological resources to learn, to develop your skills, to pursue your passions, and to feel a sense of purpose. It doesn't mean you have to be a CEO or a world-renowned artist. It means feeling like you are moving towards being the best version of yourself. Whatever that looks like for you, maybe it's learning a new language, mastering a recipe, being a compassionate friend, or excelling in your job. Second, can cope with the normal stresses of life. Life, as we all know, is a bit of a roller coaster. There will always be challenges, deadlines at work, disagreements with loved ones, unexpected bills, disappointments. Good mental health doesn't mean you won't experience stress or sadness or frustration. It means you have the resilience, the coping mechanisms, and the emotional regulation skills to navigate these challenges without becoming completely overwhelmed or derailed for long periods. It's like a well-built ship. It can weather storms without sinking. Think about a time you faced a setback. Perhaps you didn't get a job you really wanted. If your mental health is in a good place, you might feel disappointed, even sad for a bit. But you'd also be able to process those feelings. Perhaps talk to a friend, reevaluate your strategy, and then pick yourself up and try again. You wouldn't let that one setback define your entire worth or future. Third, can work productively and fruitfully. This ties into our ability to focus, to be creative, to problem solve, and to contribute meaningfully, whether that's in a paid job, volunteering, caregiving, or pursuing personal projects. When our mental health is strong, we have the cognitive clarity and emotional stability to engage with tasks and find satisfaction in our efforts. And finally, is able to make a contribution to her or his community. This speaks to our social connectedness and our innate human need to belong and to give back. It can be as simple as being a supportive neighbor, volunteering for a local cause, or simply being present and engaged in your relationships. Feeling connected and having a sense of purpose beyond ourselves is a huge component of mental well-being. So mental health isn't a static state of bliss. It's dynamic. It fluctuates. It's about having the inner resources to navigate life effectively and to flourish. It's about feeling good, functioning well, and feeling connected. It's something we all have, and just like physical health, it's something we need to nurture and protect. Imagine you're learning to play a musical instrument. Some days you hit all the right notes, the melody flows, and you feel a real sense of accomplishment. That's like a day where your mental health feels strong and vibrant. Other days, your fingers might fumble. You hit a sour note. You feel frustrated. Those are like the days where your mental health might dip a bit, perhaps due to stress or tiredness. But you don't assume your ability to play music is fundamentally broken. You rest, you practice, you seek guidance. The same applies to our mental health. Now let's shift our focus to mental illness. If mental health is our operating system running smoothly, then a mental illness, sometimes called a mental disorder, is when there's a significant problem with that system. A problem that disrupts our thinking, feeling, mood, ability to relate to others, and daily functioning. It's crucial to understand that mental illnesses are genuine health conditions. They are not a sign of weakness, a character flaw, or something that someone can simply snap out of through willpower alone. Just as diabetes affects the pancreas or heart disease affects the cardiovascular system, mental illnesses affect the brain and can have a profound impact on a person's life. The American Psychiatric Association defines a mental illness as a health condition involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of these. Mental illnesses are associated with distress and/or problems functioning in social, work, or family activities. Let's unpack this too. Changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior. This is key. A mental illness typically involves a noticeable and often persistent shift from a person's usual self. For example, someone who was once outgoing and energetic might become withdrawn and lethargic if they are experiencing depression. Someone who is generally calm might experience intense and uncontrollable worry if they develop an anxiety disorder. Associated with distress and/or problems functioning, this is a critical diagnostic criterion. The changes experienced are not just fleeting bad moods or quirky habits. They cause significant distress to the individual and/or impair their ability to function in important areas of life, their job or schoolwork, their relationships, their self-care. For instance, feeling sad after a loss is a normal human experience. But if that sadness becomes pervasive, lasts for weeks or months, and is accompanied by a loss of interest in everything, changes in sleep and appetite, feelings of worthlessness, and difficulty concentrating to the point where you can't get out of bed or go to work, that's when it might be crossing the threshold into a depressive disorder. Similarly, feeling nervous before a presentation is normal. But if you experience intense, overwhelming fear and panic attacks in various social situations, and you start avoiding those situations to the point where it limits your life and career, that could indicate an anxiety disorder like social anxiety. There are many different types of mental illnesses, just as there are many types of physical illnesses. Some common examples include depressive disorders, characterized by persistent sadness, loss of interest or pleasure, and other emotional and physical problems. Anxiety disorders, which include conditions like generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, and phobias, all characterized by excessive fear and worry. Bipolar disorder, involving shifts in mood, energy, activity levels, and concentration, ranging from manic highs to depressive lows. Schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. These are complex conditions that can affect a person's thinking, perceptions, and sense of self, sometimes involving hallucinations or delusions. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, characterized by unwanted, intrusive thoughts, obsessions, and repetitive behaviors, compulsions. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, which can develop after experiencing or witnessing a terrifying event. Eating disorders, such as anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder, which involve severe disturbances in eating behaviors and related thoughts and emotions. It's important to remember that these are medical conditions with biological, psychological, and social components. Genetics can play a role, as can brain chemistry, life experiences, especially trauma, and environmental factors. And just like physical illnesses, mental illnesses can be diagnosed and treated. Effective treatments, including therapy, medication, and support systems, are available and can make a significant difference. Imagine your car. Your mental health is the car running well, getting regular maintenance. A mental illness is like a specific part of the engine malfunctioning. Say the fuel injector is clogged or the spark plugs are worn. The car doesn't run properly. It sputters. It struggles. You wouldn't blame the car for being weak. You'd take it to a mechanic to diagnose and fix the specific problem. The same compassionate and proactive approach is needed for mental illness. So we've defined mental health as a state of overall well-being and effective functioning, and mental illness as a diagnosable condition that significantly disrupts thoughts, feelings, and behavior, causing distress and impairing function. Let's highlight the key differences more directly. 1. Universality versus specificity. Mental health. Everyone has mental health. Just like everyone has physical health, it's a fundamental part of being human. You can have good mental health, or your mental health might be struggling, but you always have it. Mental illness. Not everyone develops a mental illness. It's a specific condition or a set of conditions that affects a certain percentage of the population at different points in their lives. You can have good mental health even if you have a mental illness, especially if it's well managed. And you can have poor mental health without having a diagnosable mental illness. 2. Spectrum versus diagnosis. Mental health exists on a spectrum. Think of it as a continuum, from flourishing and thriving at one end to languishing or struggling at the other. We all move back and forth along this spectrum throughout our lives, influenced by stress, life events, self-care, and support. Mental illness typically involves a clinical diagnosis. This diagnosis is based on specific criteria outlined in diagnostic manuals, like the DSM-5, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the ICD-11, International Classification of Diseases. It's not just about feeling off. It's about meeting specific thresholds for symptoms, duration, and impairment. 3. Functioning and distress. Mental health. Good mental health means you can generally function well in your daily life and cope with normal stressors. You might experience temporary distress, but it doesn't chronically impair you. Poor mental health, even without an illness, can mean you're struggling to cope, feeling overwhelmed, or not functioning at your best. Mental illness. A hallmark of mental illness is that it causes significant distress to the individual and/or impairs their ability to function in one or more major life areas: work, school, relationships, self-care, over a sustained period. Let's use an analogy. Think of physical fitness. Everyone has a level of physical fitness, mental health. Some days you feel energetic and strong, good mental health. Other days you feel sluggish, poor mental health. A physical illness like asthma or diabetes, mental illness, is a specific diagnosed condition. Someone with well-managed asthma can still be very physically fit overall. Conversely, someone without a diagnosed physical illness can still be very unfit if they don't exercise or eat well. Poor mental health without a mental illness. One of my clients, let's call her Sarah, came to me feeling constantly exhausted, unmotivated, and overwhelmed by her daily tasks. She didn't have a diagnosed mental illness, but her mental health was clearly suffering. She was languishing. Through coaching, we worked on stress management techniques, boundary setting, and incorporating activities that brought her joy. Her mental health improved significantly. She felt more energetic, engaged, and capable of handling life's demands. She didn't cure an illness, but she actively nurtured her mental well-being. Another individual, let's call him John, had a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. For years, his anxiety was debilitating. But with therapy and, for a period, medication, he learned coping strategies and how to manage his symptoms. Now, John still has GAD. It's part of his medical history. But he lives a full and productive life. He has good mental health despite having a mental illness because it's well managed. He understands his triggers, uses his tools, and seeks support when needed. This distinction is so important because it helps reduce stigma. If we see mental illness as a sign of poor mental health or a personal failing, we misunderstand its nature. It also helps us understand that we can all work on improving our mental health, regardless of whether or not we have a diagnosed mental illness. It's also vital to understand that mental health and mental illness are not entirely separate entities. They exist in a dynamic interplay. They aren't always black and white. As we touched on, you can have a diagnosed mental illness but still experience good overall mental health. This is often the goal of treatment, to manage the illness effectively so that it doesn't dominate your life and you can still flourish. Think of someone with well-managed diabetes who eats healthily, exercises, and feels great. They have a chronic illness, but they also have good physical health. The same applies to mental illness. Someone with bipolar disorder who is stable on medication, attends therapy, and has a strong support system can enjoy periods of excellent mental health, creativity, and productivity. Conversely, you can experience poor mental health without having a diagnosable mental illness. Life events like bereavement, job loss, relationship breakdowns, or periods of intense stress can significantly impact your mental well-being, leading to feelings of sadness, anxiety, or overwhelm that don't necessarily meet the criteria for a clinical disorder. Your operating system might be sluggish, struggling under a heavy load, even if no specific software bug, mental illness, is present. In these situations, focusing on self-care, building resilience, and seeking support, like coaching or talking to a supportive friend or family member, can be incredibly beneficial for restoring good mental health. This is where the concept of a dual continuum model is really helpful. Imagine two separate but related lines. One line represents mental health, from poor to optimal. The other line represents mental illness, from no diagnosable illness to severe illness. Someone could be in the top left quadrant, optimal mental health, and no mental illness, flourishing. Someone could be in the bottom left quadrant, poor mental health, but no diagnosable mental illness, languishing, perhaps due to stress. Someone could be in the top right quadrant, optimal mental health despite having a mental illness, well-managed condition. Someone could be in the bottom right quadrant, poor mental health and also experiencing a mental illness, struggling significantly. Illness may be active or poorly managed. This model shows us that the absence of mental illness doesn't automatically mean the presence of good mental health, and the presence of a mental illness doesn't automatically mean the absence of any mental well-being. Understanding this interplay helps us tailor our approaches. If someone is languishing without a diagnosed illness, interventions might focus on lifestyle changes, stress reduction, and building coping skills. If someone has a diagnosed mental illness, the approach will likely involve clinical treatment, therapy, medication if appropriate, aimed at managing symptoms, alongside strategies to promote overall mental well-being. It encourages a more holistic view. We're not just trying to fix what's broken, we're also trying to build what's strong. It's about both treating illness and promoting wellness. So why does spending time dissecting these definitions and nuances truly matter? Why is this clarity so powerful? Firstly, it combats stigma. Misunderstanding breeds fear and judgment. When people equate mental health struggles solely with mental illness, it can prevent individuals from acknowledging their everyday mental health needs, and it can unfairly stigmatize those who do have a diagnosable illness, portraying them as fundamentally unwell all the time, which is often not the case. Recognizing that mental health is a universal human attribute that we all need to care for normalizes the conversation. Knowing that mental illnesses are health conditions, not character flaws, fosters empathy and understanding. Secondly, it encourages early help seeking. If you understand that your mental health can fluctuate and that it's okay to not feel okay sometimes, you might be more inclined to seek support earlier, whether that's talking to a friend, a coach, or a therapist, even before things reach a crisis point or meet diagnostic criteria for an illness. And if you suspect you or someone you know might be experiencing a mental illness, understanding it as a treatable health condition can make reaching out to a doctor or mental health professional feel less daunting and more like a proactive step towards recovery. Thirdly, it empowers us to take proactive steps for well-being. When we see mental health as something more than just the absence of illness, we realize we can actively cultivate it. We can learn about and practice strategies that build resilience, manage stress, enhance emotional intelligence, and foster positive relationships, all things that contribute to good mental health, regardless of whether we have a mental illness. It shifts the focus from just avoiding problems to actively pursuing a state of flourishing. Think about preventative care in physical health. We eat well, exercise, and get checkups not just to avoid getting sick, but to feel strong, energetic, and vibrant. The same applies to mental health. We can engage in mental hygiene practices, mindfulness, journaling, setting boundaries, connecting with nature, pursuing hobbies, to maintain and enhance our mental well-being. Fourthly, it leads to better support for everyone. If we as a society understand this distinction, we can advocate for better resources for both mental health promotion and mental illness treatment. We need accessible community programs that support well-being for all, and we also need comprehensive, affordable, and high-quality mental health care for those who need it. A friend of mine once described her journey with anxiety. For years, she thought her constant worry was just her personality. She didn't realize it was a treatable condition. Once she understood the difference and got a diagnosis, she said it was like a weight lifted. Not because she was labeled, but because she finally understood what was happening and knew there were ways to manage it. It gave her a roadmap. That's the power of clarity. As we draw this episode to a close, let's crystallize the key takeaways from our discussion on mental health versus mental illness. Mental health is a state of well-being that everyone possesses, existing on a spectrum. It's about coping, functioning, and realizing potential. It's something we can all nurture. Mental illness is a diagnosable health condition that affects a person's thoughts, emotions, and behavior, causing distress and impairing functioning. It's not a weakness, and effective treatments are available. You can have poor mental health without a mental illness, and you can have good mental health even with a mental illness, especially when it's well managed. They are related but distinct concepts. Understanding this difference combats stigma, encourages early help seeking, empowers proactive well-being strategies, and leads to better support for all. The journey of understanding our minds is ongoing, and it's one of the most important journeys we can undertake. By demystifying these terms, we open the door to more compassion, more effective self-care, and stronger communities. My challenge to you this week is to reflect on your own mental health. What's one small thing you can do to nurture your well-being? Maybe it's 5 minutes of quiet breathing, a walk in nature, reaching out to a friend, or finally starting that hobby you've been putting off. Remember, caring for your mental health is not a luxury. It's a fundamental part of a healthy and fulfilling life. And if you or someone you know is struggling, please remember that help is available and effective. Reaching out is a sign of strength. Thank you for joining me on Mindshift Media today. I hope this conversation has brought some clarity and inspiration to your day. If you found this episode helpful, please like it, subscribe to Mindshift Media for more conversations like this, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. What does mental health mean to you? Until next time, be kind to your mind and keep shifting those perspectives.